Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. This is episode number 13. I am your host, Ed.
I am Ebo.
This is Jeff.
I am also your host, Lee.
Yes, we four hosts are all hosting you.
The other two aren't, just me and Ed.
All right, well, at least two of us are hosting.
Host us.
All right. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to go over today. Some things that just kind of been, on our mind, waiting to get squeezed out.
Desperately waiting to be squeezed out, like a walrus.
Yeah, one thing we just sort of been talking about a little bit that we were hoping to discuss for a little while is just the interplay between role-playing games and other sorts of games.
Yeah, one of our friends, who shall remain nameless, has, on a large number of occasions, he's expressed interest in basing worlds or game settings and that sort of thing on like epic role-playing, or on not epic role-playing games, but like epic board games and that sort of thing. And I was thinking about this the other day because we being those of us who aren't Ed, have been looking into Warhammer 40k lately, and that game has a number of role-playing games associated with it, and that sounds really cool to me. Like, just the idea that you could have like a bunch of dudes make like a campaign with like all these epic battles and shit, and then you like run a game in like the wreckage that's left over. I think that'd be kind of cool.
You mean like if you're playing Deathwatch and like your character on the board is like a Space Marine from the game, something like that?
Yeah, I mean,
kind
of like that.
I follow, and I've given some thought to that sort of gameplay. I'm not much of a Warhammer person myself, but I like the idea of adding something a little bit extra into the game beyond just like what your individual characters are doing.
Yeah, like my thoughts were either running a game in like whatever's left after this giant campaign, just running a completely fresh thing, or even running sessions in between the battles, where you have like your characters do some stuff, and then in the next battle you get to like field one of your dudes. You know what I mean? That'd be cool.
Right.
Granted, it wouldn't work that well if the person who wanted to field one of his dudes was Jeff, and Jeff was playing Tyranids, and his character was a Space Marine. But I think the idea is solid.
I'm pretty sure you can take them as pets.
Oh yeah, you can take Space Marine pets when you're playing Tyranids.
You could play your genocidal finish to Small Worlds and then play some sort of D&D based game.
Yeah, that's the one that originally sparked this idea for me.
When you kill everyone, then all of your ghouls get to rule the worlds, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or fairy dragon slayers, etc.
We've had this. I've had this discussion with our nameless friend, who I'm just going to name. He's our oft-mentioned gaming mate, Rory. And
damn you!
His older brother has an insanely long list of board games and card games and other sort of strategy games in his library, and I wish this would be so much more interesting if I could remember the names of all of these games, but he's basically just got like at least one where it's a game about playing gods controlling the races, and then one that's about like playing kings ruling nations, and then I don't know, I'm pretty sure there's one that's on a slightly smaller scale, and he was just saying like play one or more rounds of each of these games before the beginning of a campaign, just to like determine the setting elements.
Oh, that's cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the exact names of each of them, but I mean there are a lot of different board games that fit each of those criteria.
Well, just I really like it when players get a chance to have some sort of influence over the game or the setting, and this is like they were there when it happened. Like that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Like
it makes
there'll be more buy-in,
Yeah. And I think it would be epic for for a particularly like interesting like one-shot game, or if you have like a whole evening dedicated, you could like run one of these board games and then run a 1 or 2 shot over a weekend or something like that, and that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, like, I think there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. It's like you even have a card game like Dominion where there's like a surprising amount of weird stuff in that game. Like there is a lot of implied political intrigue in Dominion. Like backstabbing and spies and shit. And I think that'd be kind of weird but interesting.
All right, what about the other way around? Like, I'm just recalling now, like, Sean, like, way back in high school, like, we had this speed phase, and, like, we would play that with his NPCs, like, during some of the games.
Yeah, I remember
and, like,
that.
Rory would always use some sort of, like, prestidigitation to cheat, and it was funny. I mean, like, that might have been because we were really young, but... Like,
I think games in games has a lot of potential. I mean, like, people love puzzles in games. Well, some people love puzzles in games, like in role-playing games.
Like, have you ever been in a role-playing game where they started a large-scale combat, and it's obvious that the system does not support it, so you just try to have whatever fun you can, but you're just like, meh.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, the perfect example for me would be the Death Watch, where you have, like, you start a big giant. Granted, this would be also relatively specific and ridiculously expensive. But, like, if someone starts a large scale combat and you like whip out some minis and shit, like, it just got real in here.
What do you think about, like, as a player, would you be comfortable setting aside some of the finer details of your character sheet in favor of resolving certain combats with the minis game instead?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool.
I mean, if everyone was buying into it, that just sounds fun.
That's one thing that I just sort of racked my brain with, because I feel like it would be cool, like, if let's running with the Warhammer example, you have like a larger scale combat in mind, and the idea, to get more units in play would probably be maybe have each player put in charge of like a unit, and then have them resolve things for that, like, squad or whatever.
Yeah.
But I can't say for sure. I think I would probably be into it if everyone else was, but something about it doesn't sit all that well with me. Like, you have a certain amount of investment with this character in particular, and you're basically ignoring some of that stuff in favor of the alternate mechanics.
That's just gave me a really interesting idea. Like, I've always wanted to do the thing where the players, like in like a World of Darkness game, where the players get to a point where they're just sort of in charge. They can go off and do things as a group from time to time, but then, like, they've got like people that they're like the boss of, and they send to do stuff, and you could use like different games to resolve what those people are doing, rather than like making a new troupe of characters or something like that.
Yeah, like Geist.
I actually had a
could make them Geist. I don't know.
An experience just this past weekend that reminds me of. I was hanging out with the aforementioned Rory and our other friend Sean.
Dun, dun, dun.
And we went over to Rory's brother's house, the one where the board games live. And we wound up playing, just to kind of fill a little bit of time, a game. I cannot remember the name off the top of my head, but it's like a Vampire the Requiem based card game, sort of.
Oh.
It's kind of a card game. I mean, it's like a card and dice game, but it's the basic idea is that you like have a bunch of cards for different like NPC vampires. They don't have names, they just have like archetypes, and you like deal out a pyramid of them, and the idea is to, like, over the course of the game, like, win the allegiance of different characters in the pyramid, gaining more like influential and powerful people into your group than the other people. Mm-hmm. And it's just, like
that sounds just like Vampire.
It's the
boring part.
It's a little bit less of what you guys were saying with scaling things down with another game, and it's more like you could potentially use it to resolve some of the machinations that some players, from what it sounds like Lee, would find boring in an actual game.
Shut up. Just because it's true doesn't mean you should make fun of me.
I guess since this is like an out-of-game format of the game, like, I think this would be a good thing to have buy-in. Like, if you have buy-in from everyone up front, you're like, hey, I'm going to run this game, and sometimes we're going to use minis rules to resolve stuff. Is that cool? I mean, if people are like, yeah, let's do it.
And if they're like, no, then you're like, play a different game, why don't you, jackass? And you kick them out.
I always thought it'd be fun to role-play stuff from Magic the Gathering, because I always thought those worlds were pretty cool.
How have we not gone to that example? That is...
Yeah.
One of my obvious.
Yeah.
Specifically the Mirrodin stuff and Urza Saga, because they do really good story. I mean, their books are actually good.
I read all the Ravnica books. Those were all awesome.
Why is there no role-playing game for that, since it's Wizards and D&D and stuff? Like, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Maybe too complicated?
Oh, yeah,
I think part of the problem with making a role-playing game based on Magic is that the people that you generally are in Magic, as like, when you're playing a deck, it's like you're like a godlike, omnipotent being, die infinity times, etc. And
I don't know. Read one of the books. It seemed pretty cool.
Arena? Did you read Arena?
Yeah.
Everyone.
Because Arena was awesome. But, I mean, I know I read the whole Ravnica series, and like that world, like ever since I read that, all I can think of whenever I think of starting a new game is like, wonder what it would be like if the whole game took place in a big giant city that was filled with people in danger all the time, instead of like forests and shit.
No, I think that would work both ways. Like run a game based around the Magic world, or resolve certain things in games with like Magic cards if people are like into it. Because I mean, most people probably have a bunch just sitting around they're not using.
Oh, definitely.
One of my college gaming friends told me about a game that he and his friends started where I think they picked out a selection of different Magic cards with either specific characters or just like interesting character types, and they each basically picked one at random and made characters based on it.
That sounds fun.
And it wound up, it was a D&D game, but it wound up basically smashing out of the confines of D&D pretty quickly, and something ridiculously powerful. But I think that always sounded like a cool idea.
Your level is equal to the casting cost. And...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you could go with that.
Why am I level 2?
Both on the character/world creation end and the actual like gameplay and resolution side.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds fun. I like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to go with it. So here's what I think we should do. One of us should try this sometime in the future, future, I don't know. And then we should talk about it again when we actually have experience instead of, what do you call it?
Speculating. It's a date.
It is most assuredly a date. All right. I mean, anybody else have anything they want to tack on to other game?
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about this specifically, but you can do stuff with like video games too, but that might not be too interesting. Like you could do something, simple, but you could also do like bring your character in from Fallout 3 or something like that, and that type of world. If everyone's played that game,
Yeah, everyone's played Fallout 3. Come on,
like all of us here have finished at least 1 or 2 games of that. And then you already have a character for that. Stuff like that.
Valorant role-playing game. Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I had thought of video games too. It's one of those things that like every time I'm playing a video game that puts me in the mood to play role-playing games, I always get that kind of itch to cross the streams, but I don't always know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's something to try. And depending on the type of game, like if there are, like a strategy game where you can play with other people, you can, set up something in like a scenario and resolve like I don't know, like do a Warcraft sort of like real-time strategy battle like you would use Warhammer
None of you ever played Heroes of Might and Magic, but Heroes of Might and Magic would be actually pretty epic for this sort of thing. It was all like build a city, and then like you fight against all these other crazy cities and shit, like giant monsters everywhere. It's pretty sweet. I think that would actually be pretty boss.
But I think that ultimately the important thing is that all of the players and the GM need to kind of have the same amount of buy-in into that.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be something that everyone at least would enjoy.
Right.
You know, I think it has to be a game to start with that everyone would enjoy, not just the GM, although he's clearly the most important one. And then it also has to probably be a system that everyone would enjoy, not just the GM.
It's got to be an immortal game like Vampire or something, and every game you like skip like 20 years and you go and play like an hour of SimCity.
Oh my god. Yeah, the third session, everyone dies. Godzilla.
These are really civic-minded vampires. They built
this road. It goes in circles. So British.
All right. The next thing that we wanted to discuss in this episode was improvisational GMing, and how to do it, why to do it, who likes it, who hates
valuable it. GMing.
Just making it up.
I actually do think that improv GMing is, I think it's the most valuable skill that a GM can have, especially if they have players who like to do whatever they want.
Right.
You always hear these horror stories from GMs who, they have no idea, like they set up this big elaborate scheme and then the players just ruin it by merely being themselves. And I can only think that if these GMs had, more either skill or inclination towards improvisational GMing, that wouldn't have ever been an issue for them. It would have just been awesome from the get-go. Players love that stuff.
I think it needs to be, it values from being said that there are different levels of improvisation, and every GM needs to have some.
Well, it's unavoidable.
And to a degree, I would say the more, the better, almost every time.
Yeah.
But, there's certain, there are different takes on it where, I know you, Lee, have run a number of games where your objective was to run with as little, pre-planning and note-making as possible.
3 notes.
Yep, the 3-note game was what started that. That was a good time.
3-note games are fun.
And granted, it also bears noting that you were familiar with this fictional world that you set the games in, so it's not like you sat down with a D&D player's handbook and said, hey, everybody make a character. I'm going to start thinking about this as soon as we start playing. It's more like
that would be pretty sweet.
I ran some games like that back in high school.
I think in that sort of situation, I think that the most I've started a game recently where I had this idea that the best way to run a straight improv game or a game with as much improv as possible is one where you know as much about the world as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I was originally conceptualizing this game, I was thinking about, the easiest way to do that is to have a limited environment. Like the game I'm running now takes place in a single city that is in ruins, and the player characters are 2 of 160 people in the entire city. It's like after I'd gotten all the legwork done ahead of time, thinking about what the game was going to be like and that sort of thing, the game as it is now actually flows really easily for me. I don't have to, I can run this game every week. I could have probably run this game twice a week without any worry because it doesn't, it's not difficult for me to run it at all because I know everything about the world. And I don't know, I find that to be I can't run a game that has I can't run a game that has too much planning. I always either just lose interest or I think too far ahead and then I get bored and frustrated. And running a game where it's improv, it lets me enjoy the game and the world more. And I think that I think the players enjoy it more when I do that.
That's got to be the best way about improv is to have a bank of content that you can use at any time.
Yeah.
Well, the way I think of it is, to use a popular metaphor, you put as many toys in the sandbox as you can because that way your players will want to play with the toys.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you want them to feel free to do other things, but the more interesting stuff there is to bounce off of, the easier it'll be for you to keep tabs on everything and for the players to come up with their own ideas for things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other way I run it is distinctly different, which is more, I guess, episodic. But I mean, that one I also know pretty much everything about the world, but like with a lot more holes in it. And then I just come up with three notes before the game, and then I run an entire session based on those. I don't know. I'm running one of those in White Wolf and one of them in D&D, and I guess, or Pathfinder. And I guess that, like in White Wolf, it's for anyone who's interested in doing a straight improv game, White Wolf is much easier. It's much more forgiving about it because there's no coming up with monsters. It's much, much simpler.
Right.
It's also much more likely that players are going to make their own content because they already relate to the environment so much better. Like even in a sort of apocalyptic sort of setting, like there's modern day stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to be a human in a real world as opposed to fantasy settings where everything is all fucked up crazy.
And I don't know how your particular game treats this, but I think the White Wolf system.
It on the internet.
Well, thank you. I think the White Wolf system also has more social content based on your character's merits. So there's more like innate buy-in. Like you want to have something to do with the environment, you take contacts or allies as a merit, and there you have something to do with the setting right now.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I mean, I think that in the very most basic sense, you need some improvisation to get you off of the ground. Like if you need the players to go right and they go left, then what you need is to have come up with a better idea.
I think the most basic
improv.
The most basic improv that I can think of that happens in almost every game is, you have like even in a D&D game where everything's like ruthlessly planned out.
Yeah.
You always have that moment in the very beginning where the players are trying to meet up, and like the GM has to guide that. Like he's always the guy who's in charge of that. And it always seems like such a cop out when someone's like, "Well, you guys are part of some organization. And you guys are fighting criminals and stuff." And like I don't know, it always seems so much more interesting when the characters, when you try to just guide the characters to meet in even a semi-organic way. And I think that that's the one that I think that most people, or a situation similar, is the one that seems like most people are going to have more like earlier on than most improv scenarios.
I know it's a little off topic, but I would love to run a game where there's buy-in, where that just never happens. Like the GM just skips time in between sessions and has been like, you guys arrive at the place and are doing the thing, and like it would give something for the players to talk about is to go back and do it, just like completely, because that is a really annoying part of the game, because like a game can take an hour to get started and I'm just like, I don't want to make you do this, but seriously, let's play.
And I mean, and it's always like it's difficult because you're trying to get like the one excited guy who's trying to get everything going, and then somebody else is like, "No, I'm playing a cool badass. I can't be bothered."
And it's different if it's a sandbox game or like a hybrid or like a game that's kind of on rails, because it's like if you can tell that 5 players want to progress the plot and 1 player is trying to start a shop, then that's a problem.
Is that a shot at me?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean me if anyone, but
I was so
Jeff is the biggest offender.
How would you start?
I'd say Ebo competes with Jeff on that count. I'm going to tell a story after Ebo's done with what he's saying.
To learn about improving, though, would you would you start with a sandbox game, or I mean, as a GM, what would you start off with?
I mean, if you're trying to just like get your feet wet improving, I think that the best thing you could do is learn a lot about the system you're using and make sure to, leave spaces in your game. Like if you're a person who typically plans a lot of stuff out, just leave blank spaces that you can fill with stuff. And I mean, those are going to feel, if you're a person who plans out a lot of stuff, those are going to seem the most realistic to players. If you just have holes that you can fill with ideas that pop into your head, if players go there, that sort of thing, those always seem interesting.
Yeah, and I guess like making an active effort to encourage the things that players might not expect you to. Like if a player tries to do something kind of strange and it reveals something else, or it works. Like even if you're just improvising that, like people, that's fun.
Yeah, people like that stuff. I think the encouraging the players to do weird stuff, or at the very least not impeding it, is a huge step towards making yourself improv more often.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, the players will make you do it.
I don't know exactly how to frame this without sounding like some kind of a dick GM, but I feel like one problem that I have is whenever my players try to improvise, I always let them succeed. I never get in the way of that because it's clear to me that they're having fun doing that. Mm-hmm. And even if there's a decent reason why they shouldn't succeed, I almost always kind of nudge them in the direction of success. Just because they want to get this thing on their own completely, and I can't help but give it to them.
I know what you mean.
It's like, I guess what it is, it's like if they improvise a solution, I never ever improvise a problem that they would have with it.
I don't know. I always feel like if there's an obvious solution and the players don't take it for one reason or another, which happens a depressingly large amount of the time, then that like I try to make it at least seem like what they're doing is clearly the more difficult solution.
The solution to that problem is to make your solutions impossible to achieve.
Clearly, we need to build a 40-foot pole in the cave so we can repeatedly pound at the cement and break the door.
Sure
down.
Do.
That's what we're trying to do in Lee's White Wolf game.
We're
trying to drill underwater using things that...
a problem I presented the players without presenting a clear solution, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I just started making stuff up.
A solution.
I presented in a situation that, like, while I had the players walk for several hours, and while I was describing that, I thought of this situation, and I just sort of put it there and let the players do whatever they wanted in it. And boy, they went some directions that I did not anticipate afterwards. But I mean, it turned out really cool.
It's me and Evo, and he put us in charge. I mean, this is the best game ever. Like, I don't know.
They're very, very in charge of what happens in that game.
We're simultaneously trying to drill a hole underwater, even though we can't swim well, and at the same time trying to fill a gushing hole above water, and it's just we can't do it, but it doesn't stop us from trying.
We can't do it. At least he admits it.
He admits it. But no, like, I don't know. I think that presenting, being able to present situations to players and then letting them just figure it out is a really, I mean, like, that's something that I think
that's hard to do.
Yeah, it's difficult, and it comes with like practice. Like I've probably run maybe like 50 plus sessions that are almost entirely improv. And, I mean, I don't think I was comfortable doing that sort of thing for a long time.
Just to mention, it's not all GM. You need player buy-in. Like in that situation, if Lee tells us, "Hey, the pole doesn't break through the thing," we just accept it at face value. We're not like, "Oh, well, the force times the pressure plus the something." You're an idiot. I mean, we're not.
I mean, you're clearly an idiot. I'll tell you that.
We don't really talk back. Like, if the GM is going to, ad lib, the players have to give them a little leeway too. Mm-hmm. That's just got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, if your GM is clearly ad-libbing a whole game, first of all, he should probably tell you that ahead of time so he doesn't kill himself.
Or you.
And second of all, you should, at least go a little easy on him on some of that sort of stuff. Because, unless your GM is some sort of god, he's not going to be perfect 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And I would...
Dolphins are mammals, stupid.
I know Sean hates... Sean is always maligned ad-libbing because he has these carefully planned out plots and that sort of thing, and he always says that when he ad-libs, he ruins them, and that's why he doesn't GM anymore. And I call him a coward. But the point of it is that I don't think that has to happen. If your players know you're GMing or you're ad-libbing stuff, and we know Sean ad-libs stuff all the time, we don't hold it against him. Yeah. We don't, you can't hold it against your GM if they make a slip up or something like that.
They'll say the wrong name or something like that.
And that's fine. Especially if they're coming up with everything on the fly. That's a lot of mental exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you had a story.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to admonish Ebo for something he's done in the past.
We can't skip this.
Because I tend to overanalyze things in games, and I go way too far.
We were just talking about, getting the party off the ground, and how sometimes somebody will be just like, it's your classic guy who wants to run a shop, or druid who won't leave the forest. But this was... Jeff ran a White Wolf game back in the old White Wolf long ago, and it was a...
Oh no, it's Shark Time.
Oh my god, yes!
Changing... Everybody, let me tell it. It was a Changing Breeds game, and as I recall, we were sort of a rainbow coalition of shapeshifters, all united by some common cause.
Yeah.
I don't remember everybody in the group, but I remember I was a standard werewolf. I think we had one or more werecats also.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Kitsune game, which
what character do you think that Ebo made?
I'm gonna give you a hint. It was Shark for 3 months during this game.
Well, we want to
shut up.
We want to go on an adventure, so let's go to ocean.
What?
That doesn't happen unless we're by the beach.
Was that I did not know that this had occurred at all until a couple years ago when Jeff's like, you didn't do anything in that game. I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go. I thought that's what we were supposed to do. I was making stuff for my guy to do before things happened, but all I was doing in that game, it turns out, was sitting in the ocean and playing with the other sharks.
It went like this. Okay, so the vampire villain, you guys are going to go try and slay her. Is anyone going to go get Ebo? Or no. Ebo, what are you doing? I'm in the ocean.
To give him some credit, I have
feel
never...
so bad. I really like that guy.
I have
so awesome.
Read that book, Rokia, I think it was called.
No, and why would you want to?
We didn't read any of those
books.
But
I'm pretty sure
I read the Grawl book.
Okay, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure somewhere in that book it specified that they have to / want to go back to the ocean all the time.
So that was so awesome.
Back in the ocean.
The whole thing is so I think it's Rokia. Yeah. They have in ability a gift or whatever it's called, like the werewolves, where the werewolves have wishbone, right? So it's where you just rent someone. They just pull them apart. And the sharks have this ability that I wanted so hard to do, and it's it was like called Feeding Frenzy or something, and it's just a pack of sharks that eat a person in the water.
You can only do it in the ocean.
There was no way that I had any idea that we were never gonna fight in the ocean, no matter what. But I stayed out there just in case something was gonna happen.
I'd like to point out that I've never heard of a swimming vampire, and we were fighting vampires for that entire game.
I played a surfing vampire once.
It was all vampires. No, I mean, it was just, oh god, everything about the game was retarded. There was just so much dumb going on.
It's a ridiculous game.
I liked Rokia a lot, but honestly, I did not know I was doing that until just recently.
Yeah, well, we knew.
I just remember just hanging around in the ocean waiting for stuff to happen on land,
and then
at night.
Then there was the time when you played a tree.
That
wasn't quite so awkward.
No, he knew he was doing it that time.
You were large size, and we were going into caves all the time, and you had to.
That was not my fault. That was Jeff's fault. He should improvise.
You played a tree. You were the one who chose to be.
Yeah, just looking at the cave he wrote down. He's like, I don't know, 10-foot ceiling.
Yeah, it's weird. All of the corridors are 10 feet wide. Why? I don't.
It's like you were planning on planting trees down here.
That's the answer. He did just to spite me.
Anyway,
get them. Hopefully, someone sets a tree on fire and you play a different character. Maybe someone that can fit in corridors, not in dwarf, but like a gnome or something.
Oh.
So yeah, you gotta add the.
Definitely do.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get away from it entirely.
You can run a game all ad lib. You just need to know what you're doing.
I think you need to know.
If you don't play Fiasco.
Yeah, just play Fiasco until you're comfortable ad-libbing.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's true.
That's a cool game.
It is fun.
Yeah, and that's basically. I was just going to add the point that I think you can, if you want, the more ad-lib you want to go, the most you can possibly add, I think, is only really suitable for like one-shot or limited engagement games. Where you're just, your desire to play outweighs your interest in working something out ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I think
we played a lot of those.
Yeah, constantly. Most of the games I've run were started that way, and they rarely lasted more than 1 or 2 sessions.
That's true. So, not many of your games lasted more than 1 or 2 sessions.
But that can go somewhere too. Like you can have an interesting idea that you run a whole session with, and then afterwards you're like, I don't like it, or maybe afterwards you're like, that was fun, and now I've got this, and this idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think typically. I think typically players, at least in our group, seem to understand that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think people are receptive to new ideas from their GMs.
Yeah, it's like not an event horizon, but whatever the space one is. Where it's like if you get past, I don't know, with me maybe it's like 3, it'll usually end.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Threshold.
I was going to explain what an event horizon was because I read about it on Wikipedia the other day, but I'm not gonna.
I don't remember anyway. It's something about.
It's not that interesting of a topic. I'll be honest.
Whatever. Nerd Rage had us, please.
Yeah.
On our blog.
Yeah, no, Jeff needs to be educated.
All right.
Yell at Jeff.
We should have a whole forum topic for that because that happens on a pretty regular basis. That Jeff ruins science or the world.
Escape velocity. There you go.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Campaign finish escape velocity. CFEV.
To be completely honest, I'm not.
Don't pronounce that.
I couldn't define event horizon for you, but for some reason that expression seemed more correct than the one you actually wound up using.
Yeah, you know what? I like event horizon. Let's go with that.
Okay.
Whatever.
Right. I'm just gonna go kill myself over here.
All right.
No tensions.
Yeah, and I guess we had a third topic in mind to round off the episode, which we actually talked about surprisingly frequently during that last subject, which was just, starting new games and the, challenges and rewards of doing so. And, we talked a little bit about that just with how sometimes there's a demand to be improvisational with your manipulating the player characters into working together.
I actually now this is I admittedly have not started as many games as, for example, Jeff and Ed, who started untold numbers of games and almost never finished them. Ed, although Jeff has a better track record than somebody for a change.
I start my plenty of failures.
You say almost?
You definitely do.
Almost never. I can't think off the top of my head of a game I ever finished.
One game, and then restarted it, and it was not as good.
That doesn't count. I cannot, in good faith, make that count, because then my track record is 0.
Which one?
Star Wars. You finished Star Wars. That came to a really epic conclusion. That was awesome. Remember that?
I guess that was pretty good.
That was awesome.
That was the only one.
That was good.
And I give you credit for that one.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it where I can get it.
Like, I have never finished a game, but I've never really gone out with the intention to finish a game. But, like, starting a game always seems really difficult to me because I want to know exactly, like, beforehand, I want to know exactly what kind of game that I want, and all I can think about is all the cool stuff that's going to happen in the middle, you know? And that's, like, that problem is, you know, part of the reason that I just improv stuff, because I can't think like that because it drives me crazy. It just, like, I can't handle it, you know? Mm-hmm. I'll never start a game that I'm happy with like that. So, I mean, I think that an important part of starting a game is figuring out what kind of game you're comfortable, like, running, you know? Like, I think that's more important than, you know, than knowing where the game is going to go. That sort of thing, like having a really epic overall like thing going after the game is cool, but you know, make sure that it's a game that you want to run and you're comfortable running before you even start it.
I think another thing for starting games is that's probably the most important to me is gauging the likelihood of player buy-in.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, in the situation you were talking about where there's a high demand, we want to play, let's play anything, then it doesn't matter. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You're going to have fun. That's what everyone wants to do. But, like, if everyone's busy and stuff and, you know, like, what do people want to play? Like, do people really want to put a lot of effort into, like, they want to have all their character backgrounds and really, you know, intricate stuff like that? Or do they kind of want to go on a relatively shallow epic adventure, or do they want to just do a dungeon crawl? Like, what do people want to do? I don't know.
Shallow epic seems like a nonsense phrase to me.
Well, you know
I know what you mean. I know just what you mean. I really, you know, kind of a low concept, I guess is the term I would use. No, maybe not low concept. Anyway, I understand what you mean. I was going to say, like, you said, like, it's easier if everybody's just like, whatever, we'll play anything. But I don't always think that that's true, because I feel like, you know, this is probably just some mild form of insanity that I have, but I always feel like I really want everybody to be on the exact same page as me when the game starts. And I almost never get there because everybody just wants to play instead. And so it's just like, it's not like I want you to do homework. It's just like, I don't know, I sort of feel like my desire to start playing is almost always higher than my desire to counsel everybody on the proposed game and its emotional content and all, you know, what will be expected of every player. And it's just like, hey, let's play right now.
I guess this is kind of universal for us, and maybe this is part of what I want to talk about is, like, and it might be just because we're getting older, but we've all been running games with more and more upfront work or upfront buy-in on the player's side before the game actually starts. And that's, you know, I mean, like, Lee runs a lot of improv stuff, whereas my stuff is usually a little more planned, as much as it can be. But we're both doing that, so it's yeah.
Like, I had a lot of stuff to explain before the game. I wonder, is it just because we're getting older? I don't know, because, like,
I don't know.
I remember not giving a crap about it, or like when I was younger, and I think
it was jaded, or I don't know.
I don't know. It just seems more. It seems more valuable now.
Right. The game time, with less game time, the individual session is of higher value.
Yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it.
It's like when you have one session a week, or maybe less frequently, then you don't want this game to you don't want the game to fizzle after one session, but wouldn't it be worse if it fizzled after 2 or 3 sessions? Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, you have those sessions to play with, but it's sort of I think that as a GM, I have this weird skewed sense of game momentum, and I always feel like I need more, and I feel like I have more, and then it turns out that I don't. And that might just be my own I don't know, my own failure to keep my interest up. But
I think you read too many role-playing books.
I have an easier time starting a game than I have continuing a game.
I think that's universal.
And it's not necessarily as true now, since I haven't been playing quite as often, but it's just like I have so much starting game energy built up. I could start like a dozen games today, and I would still want to start more.
It's easy to get excited about something,
right?
Following through, it's how valuable do you really perceive that as being?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for some games, the first 2 sessions are really cool, and no one wants to follow it through, and everyone's satisfied. Like for me, I mean, my solution to this is I just run short games, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my solution is that I set out to run long games, and they wind up being woefully short and tapering off into obscurity. But
like other role-playing groups, I hear about them running games that last like 2 years or something like that, and I don't think I've ever been able to do that.
Well, I don't know. Like, I had a game. I think the longest game I ran was like maybe a year. My first 3-note game. It lasted pretty long, right?
Yeah, it did.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it always seems to me that, like, when I start a game, at least the ones that continue for any length of time, I don't know. I don't have any idea where they're going to end up. So it never seems like like an issue where it ends. Yeah. And I think that might just be the improv thing, but I mean, it never seems to bother me.
Our group has never been like a gaming night group either. It's kind of misleading to say you ran a game for a year, because sometimes we would play that game 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we would go a month or more without playing a single session. And so, it's kind of hard to even gauge how long some of these games last.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the longest game I ever ran was a group game, and so that doesn't count. That went on for a few months, so...
That's true.
The other ones besides were like 2 days.
That game...
I
thought that was mostly in your head.
That game was long...
Mostly in your head.
In terms of how many sessions it went, as I recall. Fairly long, anyway.
What game?
The
Voidwalkers?
Voidwalkers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know I ran probably 4 or 5 sessions of that, and I was one of 4 or 5 GMs for that, so...
I ran 6 sessions of Voidwalkers.
It's that sort of high demand to roleplay without as much of a care. Like, that's a great example of a game where that just peters off after a while. Like, that was really fun for a while, and then it just started to get old.
Yeah.
It was like someone had to run.
Yeah.
Right. And it was, it was kind of, we would always call dibs on a session, like, I want to run the next one. And then it was, it wasn't always, we would want to run before they would want to, or we would want to play before they would want to run sometimes, and it got to be a little sticky.
Yeah. I think that was the closest I ever came to finishing an actual game. Like, I sort of finished a little story arc thing there, and that was kind of fun. But, no, like, for me, actually, like, I have always had, sort of like Ed, like, I have all these ideas for role-playing games. But, a lot of that has been alleviated because I don't know what I'm going to be running, like what's going to happen in the next session of the game I'm running now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like as much of an issue to not start 100 games. You know, like it doesn't. I'm not missing that newness, that freshness. You know, some people, like from what it sounds like, you know, I mean, I read stuff on the internet, yada yada, about people who really, you know, they like the comfort of having a character for a long time or running a game, you know, with like extended villains and that sort of thing. And I guess, you know, like I can't even imagine like starting a game like that. Like I would have to be thinking, the entire time I'd be thinking so far in the future that I'd get tired before the game started.
Yeah, I'd be really worried about losing steam. Like, thankfully, character creation is generally fun.
That's true. I love creating characters, even in Burning Wheel. Where I thought it was going to be more of a pain in the ass than it was.
That was actually a really fun character creation.
Yeah, I'd play some more Burning Wheel. Maybe not over the internet, but I'd play it. Maybe even over the internet.
Oh yeah. But the thing about when you're talking about starting games and just sort of the concept, like I would like to do more just kind of playing and having fun, and less every game is us trying to take over the world with role playing.
Yeah,
like, it's maybe a bit too much, but at the same time, it's an issue of time, and we all have stuff we like to do.
You want to make it feel like your game has weight.
Yeah.
In a short time, you know, because you have either less time to play or less sessions even. And
especially with the online thing, like it feels like just sort of getting together casually when we all happen to have time is really unlikely. Yeah.
I would go impossible, not unlikely.
Yeah.
Do you think that like starting a game that you want to have, the word you used was weight, so I'm going to roll with that, like more weight. Do you think it would be best to start with more weight? Like I'm not necessarily saying like higher level characters, but like more of your character's goals and objectives and even progress toward those goals being established by the time you make the character?
I do. I think that like I think part of the problem in a game that has a lot of weight, I mean, unless you're some sort of amazing god GM, like it seems like the beginning of a game that is intended to be a long game would have a difficult time picking up weight in the beginning, you know? And I think having like Jeff says, you know, like the player buy-in, you know, where the players are invested in their characters before the game starts, I think that you could maintain momentum over a longer period of time with characters like that. You know, with characters and players who are invested in the world.
I've had a very hard time being interested, like playing in games that were supposed to be heavy like that, if I wasn't immediately vested in my character. If I just kind of slack off and don't really care about what they do, it's tough for me to really get vested into not vested, but to get like caught up in the world itself, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think character backgrounds is something we don't do at the start of games. In general, I mean, a lot of the time we just sort of skip over it. And I remember doing that, you know, back in the day. In second edition, we always had character backgrounds, and they were awesome. You know, and like run these off-the-wall White Wolf games, and you know, he'd be like, "Oh, you get extra background points if you write a character background." And I was always like, "Yeah, let's do this," you know. And I'd like type up a few pages, like a little novella for Roy to read. And is that the fan or is that you?
Me?
It's the fan. Anyway, so my point is that like we don't do that anymore. Well, and instead we don't usually do that anymore.
One thing that I think would make that even simpler is our other mutual gaming friend Sean. He used to do character backgrounds in a big way, except that he would write them.
That's true.
Yep.
He would take your input and then he would write it himself.
I mean, some of the earlier ones, I guess even in his first Lanta game, which was his first really big one, he used a lot of player input. But in that one, it was more like he would say like, "This is what I got. Is that okay?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that to a degree that is useful if you want to, if you want to set the level of, high or low concept from the get-go. Mm-hmm. You basically say like, your character has a lot at stake already, or your character is pretty much fresh. But I wonder if you wanted to run a game that you're afraid isn't going to last very long, like let's say the objective is for the party to rise up and topple the tyrant and rule the kingdom. Maybe you want to start with characters who, they have a keep and they've amassed an army and they're ready to start doing it. Whereas if you want your characters to start at the street level, maybe their end goal would be to eliminate corruption in their city, or even just defeat the people who have them under pressure and bug out. Mm-hmm. And you can decide from there
after they complete their shorter goal.
If you want to make a new objective and work toward that, or if you're just done.
Yeah.
And that seems to me that makes sense. I think that's the way a lot of these long epic games start. It's where even if the GM has something long term in mind, it seems like a lot of the successful GMs who run these long games can at least hold that idea back in order to give the game room to grow. You know what I mean? You don't need to start thinking about your world-ending apocalypse from session one.
I've been going over some old material, mostly things that I cooked up for games and never wrote down and never wound up using. And I had this one far-fetched, extremely epic, and I mean that in the sense of the 3rd edition epic level handbook. It was like a campaign plot, and it was just I came to realize, because I had this kind of idea cooking up shortly after one of my earlier 3rd edition games petered out, and I was just I came to realize that I was never going to run this game, because I was thinking about all the stuff that was going to happen when the characters were level 20, and, they were never going to get past 4 if I started this game. But I've been writing it out anyway, because... listen to me, because, first of all, I've been writing it out anyway because I remember being really fond of this stuff, and I didn't want to forget it, and also because it's just a lot of really good... jumping off points for lesser plots are included in it, because I got to a good amount of detail, and so it's just setting material now. Mm-hmm. And so basically I've come up with a number of subsequent games, and what I wind up doing when I have a stillborn campaign like that is I almost always
imagine you have a lot of those.
I almost always create a context in the game world where a group of epic level heroes destroyed that threat, and this is what the world is like now, and this is where the characters come in. Mm-hmm. And I've sort of, like I said, I've been working through that, and I've actually kind of been thinking about this is where the heroes come in before any of that ever happened, or this is where the heroes might come in, midway through the campaign that would have wound up with them at 20th level destroying godlike beasts, and it's just. Ultimately, I think that even though I'm never going to run that particular super epic, ultra long game, that there are still juicy chunks of story falling off of it at every angle that are just waiting to be kind of scooped up and nibbled on.
Mm-hmm. And players, at least I don't know, I say players, but I mean me. I tend to be impressed by stuff like that. I was just very impressed one of the first time I played in Sean's game, and there was a big deal made about this monument we encountered, and it had this whole history, and it had nothing to do with what we were doing, but it's just he presented it in a way where it seemed really impressive, and I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's
like a lot of that like background story detail stuff. You know, like depending on the game, that stuff seems either really, really cool or boring.
Well,
and I wonder if it's the way it's presented. Because like when Rory does some of that stuff, it seems kind of boring to me.
It depends. I mean,
no offense, Rory, if you're listening.
Aww.
I feel like I'm gonna crush his hopes and dreams.
No,
continue.
I just I don't know. Details help to make a world seem alive.
Yeah. And I
think you can get a lot of details out of a game that doesn't even start, like for other games.
Yeah.
And you know, it's harkening back to our earlier topic. And I don't want this to sound like a slam on anybody's GMing style, but I feel like the details that always seem the most legit are the ones that are like planned ahead of time. It's like an improvised detail, I think can carry a lot of weight, but I always kind of feel like something seems more significant when I know that the GM has been waiting to tell the players about it. Like when they're interested in it, and it's not just like filling story context with something.
And that's where I think that like in the in preparing to run an improvised game, that knowing about the world is super important.
Yep.
You know, it's like that's why if you're considering running an improvised game, try a limited setting first. Like, try a small setting that you can know everything about.
The trick is for the players to think it is the one thing when you're really just improving, and that doesn't happen much. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe I'm just always fooled in all the games. But like, I thought Sean did a good job of I don't know.
I always thought it always felt like he did a good job of presenting material that had been in his brain forever, as if it was still fresh and new. You know what I mean? Like a giant monument.
Yeah.
You know, he would present it as if it was the coolest thing in the world to him, even though it's been stewing in his brain for like a couple of years. And to me, I would get bored by that detail, like as the GM. But you know, I mean, it always seemed interesting.
And I know what you mean by carrying weight, but like if I know a game is all improv and like details just sort of start coming up and things start coming together, that seems really impressive. Like, yeah,
that's true.
Just it gives you like this more buy-in to the world. It makes everything seem more real. I don't know.
Topic blending today.
Yeah,
like a fruit smoothie of topics in here.
Yeah, and I think it's about time we frap that smoothie up and swallow it down.
Oh yeah. So play some Fiasco if you want to improv and don't want to worry about it.
It's a super great improv-y game. Make you feel like you're really, really a crazy person playing it.
Don't think you can go straight from Fiasco to an improv game.
You
could try.
Different. You can different types of improv.
But no, I mean, if you're a GM who rigorously plans things, you know, and you get frustrated that your players, ruin your plans, and then like the whole session is ruined or something like that. You know, I mean, I suggest you just try running an improv game for a while, just to get better at it. It's a valuable skill that'll help you in any game.
You play Fiasco as a sub game for a game, so you can learn to improv and start that game, all brought together.
Yeah, you did.
Whoa!
That would have to be. I'm sorry, Jeff. It just got inceptioned in here.
Game within a game.
Game, other game. And I think we're gonna sign off with that. Don't be shy. You can come to our website and listen and talk and send us some email.
Send us a whole bunch of emails. Even if it's just one guy sending us a bunch of emails, I'll respond.
If you send us an email, all of us will reply. We can guarantee that.
I will, definitely.
It will not be awkward in any way.
Also, Joe, who is not on this episode, will reply.
Twice.
Yes.
He'll reply twice because he wasn't in this episode.
Okay. All right. Well,
you.
That is going to be it. So we will catch you next time.
Yep. Peace.
Later.
Bye.